Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss everything there is to know in Major League Baseball. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah.
And I'm Ben.
Yeah, what's up, man? The last show, we had such a good show.
Yeah, we talked a lot about a couple of people who are injured in Matt Holliday of the Cardinals, Giancarlo Stanton of the Marlins. Talked a lot about Dansby Swanson getting called up to be the shortstop, probably of the future for the Braves. A lot of great things.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of players today we're going to be discussing as a future of another franchise, that is. We'll get that later into the show. We're going to talk about some of the award races here for American League MVP and the Cy Young. The races are heating up, guys.
And I feel like in the American League, more so than the National League, we have really a sort of a tussle there. We have no clear-cut favorites at the moment that are really standing out that I think have solidified their spot as they're going to win it or not.
Yeah, and to begin things off, we're going to be talking about relief pitcher Jonathan Papelbon. Yes, he got released by the Washington Nationals last weekend. He got demoted from the closer's role after the Nationals acquired Mark Melancon from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And Jonathan Papelbon, he has showed a few interests in teams that show a few interests in him. There's two in particular, Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs. And so do you think a reunion in Boston is more likely than going to Chicago?
Then the Cubs, I'd say yes. I mean, David Ortiz, longtime slugger of the Red Sox, did say that they would welcome Papelbon back in open arms. You know, he kind of did Boston dirty when he left them in free agency when he went to Philly. And now he ended with the Nationals, so he is a free agent. But I could see him going back to Boston, and they could use his arm. He is 36, so he is kind of aging. I don't really see him as a closer anymore. I see him maybe as a setup man at best. And he already is familiar there. He's familiar with the team, the organization, the city, everything. So I think he would fit back in nicely there in Boston.
Oh, yeah, me too. And he doesn't have to be the closer. They already got Craig Kimbrell there. They just need an eighth-inning guy. You got Koji Uehara as that setup man who's been struggling with injuries this year. And I think it's a perfect fit because, the Boston Red Sox, they're in playoff contention right now. And he's just absolutely good fit for them because this is the team he did start out with. And he's obviously a different pitcher than he was like 10 years ago.
When he helped them win World Series. So, like you mentioned, he's a different pitcher, it could be a possibility. One team that is not going to be pursuing Papelbon's arm is the Rangers. They went out and said that they have no interest in him whatsoever. You mentioned the Cubs. They do have John Lester, another former teammate in Boston when he was with the Red Sox. So that could be a possibility. They did, just acquire Aroldis Chapman, though. So that I don't really see where Papelbon fits in that bullpen.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out where he would fit because, they got Aroldis Chapman as the closer. They got Hector Rodon, eighth-inning guy, and they had another pitcher who also they acquired, Joe Smith, I believe. I think he's also in the back end. So I don't know where Papelbon will be, but the fact that Chicago Cubs could possibly beef up their bullpen even more, they can be even more deadlier with Papelbon. I'm not saying he's not going to be a shutdown pitcher. But the fact that you can put Papelbon maybe in the 6th or 7th inning, then that can really help Chicago Cubs.
Okay.
It could. But I kind of see Papelbon going to the Red Sox. I think it's more likely that way.
Okay, Papelbon really, as you mentioned, the Nationals basically let go of him. He was really struggling this year. He had an ERA of 4.37. He did have 19 saves, but only 31 strikeouts. That's, Papelbon really is known for being a power pitcher, getting a lot of strikeouts, really high velocity fastball, and he's really lost that, at 35. What's the one thing that pitchers usually lose right away and really sort of hinders their decline is their velocity? And Papelbon's really lost that this year. I do think Papelbon as a whole still has something to contribute, but definitely not in a setup role or a closing role. You mentioned maybe a 6 or 7 inning guy, depending on how long your starting pitcher can go. I think that's probably his best role right now. But I definitely think at least someone will make an offer to him, take a gamble on him. He did say he hoped to have a team picked out within the next day or so. So
that was on Tuesday.
Right, and that still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So I think something will happen relatively soon, and I expect him to be somewhere.
Yeah, and, like you said, Papelbon may not be like the perfect fit to be an 8th inning or 7th inning guy, but if he goes to Boston, that's probably what he's going to do, honestly. To see the Cubs, they don't need him. They don't need Papelbon to be a setup man or a 7th inning guy, because they already have guys already in those roles. So I do think Papelbon wants more of a significant role with the team, and I think he'll get it with the Boston Red Sox. He has played there. He knows what it's like, and they're in contention. So I think that's the place where he wants to go, and I do think that's where he is going to sign.
Is Boston?
I think he is going to go there.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
As far as Papelbon is concerned, I definitely think he's going to want to go to a contender. I don't see him going to a bottom feeder. I don't see him going to like the Padres, the Braves, the Twins. I don't see him really fitting there. I see him wanting to go to a contender, trying to win a championship. He's won a couple with Boston. Maybe we see him turning back the clocks there in Fenway Park. I don't know. We'll have to always update you here on the show as far as everything that Jonathan Papelbon is concerned with. I mean, he had a decent year last year. If you look at what he did with the Phillies before he got traded, he had an ERA of 1.59. It was really with Washington where he really struggled. His ERA rose to about 3. So maybe it was just really he didn't really fit there, and now he's hoping for a change of scenery to sort of get him back to his glory days when he was with the Red Sox.
Well, remember that little dugout confrontation you had with Bryce Harper, too.
Right, and I think that sort of stems to what I was saying is like he just wasn't really a good fit. That happens all the time in all sports. You have players who have been standout performers and they go somewhere else and it just didn't really fit. Or they are in a certain system, a certain, in baseball's term, a clubhouse, but certain fits just always work well with certain players. I think Papelbon may have fit into that role. Just a good fit in Boston, not necessarily a good fit in Washington.
Yeah, which is a shame because Washington they really needed Papelbon last year too. And when combined his numbers from Philly and Washington, he had an ERA of 4.37. That's pretty high. And he did get 19 saves, but he just wasn't as dominant he just wasn't that power pitcher like he was, and he wasn't like that this season before being demoted. And
yeah.
I don't know if Papelbon's ever going to be a closer again in this league. It seems like he just doesn't have it anymore, and he is 9th all time in Major League history with saves, but I don't know. I don't think he's going to be the closer like full time anytime soon. Like I can probably see him get saves here or there, but going out there every day, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen for Papelbon anymore.
No, I don't think so either. I see him being just really a reliever. Maybe he'll come in to face a right-hander. He is a right-handed pitcher. He's still known for sort of his power, although he's really on the decline in his older age, I should say. So maybe he'll just be one of those sort of specialty guys, face some right-handers or something like that. I think that's probably his best role. It's not going to be a closer role.
Yeah, but he is still a valuable piece though to whatever team he goes to.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I think he could definitely still be part of the sort of conversation if a team maybe like Boston are still in contention, maybe signs him. You're probably going to get him for cheap. The thing with Papelbon that I look at is you're really looking at low risk, high reward because he struggled last couple of years. He's older. You're not going to have to pay him a ton of money. And with that being said, if you don't get anything out of him, you're not really giving up much. But if you do, he's going to obviously be a big benefit to your team.
Yeah, and I think wherever team he goes to, if he does struggle again with either the Red Sox,
then I think he'll be done.
Oh yeah, I was gonna get to that. Red Sox or Cubs, I think he will be done, and he's gonna have no team's gonna want to sign. Well, they will sign to a minor league contract, but Papelbon's not gonna take a minor league contract. He wants no.
He's kind of his whole career. He's kind of been. I don't want to say necessarily an ego guy, but really an emotional guy. Think about all the saves he's had in the past, where he kind of screams and yells, fist pumps. He's really emotional, really outspoken. You mentioned what he had with Bryce Harper last year, so I don't think he would really take that role very good.
No, he would not take that role very good, but I do see him going with the Boston Red Sox, and I think it's going to happen over the weekend, and we're probably going to talk about it next week if it does happen. And I'll be surprised.
No matter where he goes, if he goes somewhere, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I will be surprised if he's not on the team by the time we do our show next week. I would be really surprised.
I would agree. I think he'll be going somewhere.
All right. Well, we're going to take our first break, and we're going to get into some news out of New York. Yes, we're going to be talking about some young prospects who have made an impact for the Yankees already in the Bronx. Yes, they are known as the Baby Bombers. What do you think about that name, Ben? Baby Bombers.
I like that. It's kind of catchy. I mean, I guess it's okay. I don't really see an issue with it.
So these young Baby Bombers have been on a tear since they came into the league last week, and we'll get more into that when we come back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We have a couple of games currently in action. In the top of the 7th inning, we have the Boston Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers tied at 1. And then in the top of the 4th inning, the Chicago Cubs have a 5-0 lead over the Brewers. Chris Bryant hits a 2-run home run, his 29th of the year in the 3rd inning, having a great year for the Cubs. Yeah, no surprise there.
We might talk about him in our last segment regarding MVP races. But anyways, we got... It looks like in New York they got a couple of young players there up there in the Bronx. Yes. Have you seen what Aaron Judge and Tyler Austin did?
Yeah, they've been doing great really since
and Gary Sanchez. Yeah.
They've been doing great really since they started getting some playing time. The Yankees, we kind of talked about it a little bit with the trade deadline, and Alex Rodriguez are definitely going in a different direction, trying to get a lot younger, building for the future, not necessarily for the present, which is kind of ironic when you look at the Yankees. They've really been that team that every top free agent they would go out and sign, pay big money for everyone. They're kind of doing things a lot differently now. So they've been doing quite well for the Yankees since they started playing a lot.
Yeah, and going back to Aaron Judge and Tyler Austin there, they were the first pair of teammates to hit home runs in their major league debuts last weekend, especially in the first at-bat. That's the first time it's ever happened. First time in the history of Major League Baseball.
And I love Aaron Judge's jersey, number 99.
Yeah,
like
99.
Throwing it like Manny Ramirez style for the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. I love that. Kind of being outspoken, kind of standing out there. I love that. That's really nice.
Yeah, so it looks like there's a case of the Baby Bombers now, ushering a new era for the Yankees. And, they got Gary Sanchez there, who has been getting a lot more playing time now since Alex Rodriguez has been released. They basically released Alex Rodriguez to give Gary Sanchez more time. He's been getting more time at the designated hitter spot. He's probably going to be their catcher of the future. Brian McCann is still there. He has a couple of years left in his contract.
He's a lot older, though. So
yeah.
He's past his glory days with the Braves.
Yeah. Man, the Baby Bombers, man. This is a very exciting young group, and this is only part of it.
Exactly.
They still got guys coming in next year. Greg Berg, who's probably going to take over first base next season. Mark Teixeira is retiring. So, yeah, man, they look like they're going to be an exciting young team to watch now. The Yankees have been probably one of the most hated teams, not just in baseball but in sports.
Unless you're a fan of them, I would agree with you. Yeah,
but I feel like that might kind of change with these new wave of guys. They didn't go out and sign these guys. They made some moves to bring young players in, and they're building the team kind of like more in a traditional way now. They're not going to they haven't been able to get the big free agent like they had in the past. Signing Alex Rodriguez to a 10-year deal, or even getting Carlos Beltran a couple years ago. But yeah, they're doing it in a more traditional way now, and because it is it's
different for
new era
for the Yankees.
And it's kind of like a new the time is different. It's
exactly.
A different time.
And it's not just the people we already mentioned that are going to fill into this sort of baby boomers phase here. We have other people that they've acquired recently in trades. Think about the trade deadline when they traded Beltran, traded Miller, traded Chapman just a week before. People like outfielder Clint Frazier, shortstop Gleyber Torres, left-hander Justice Sheffield. They're acquiring all these young guys, really not just these guys who already stepped in like Judge in them, but even guys that they might be seeing next year, the year after that, really building that farm system. These baby bombers could be, 2-3 years down the road, even more and more better.
Yeah, and not only that, those three prospects that you named, they also add to a farm system that included Jorge Mateo, an infielder, and outfielder Blake Rutherford. Don't forget, he's not an offensive player, but they got Luis Severino. He's one of their top young prospects, you should say. He has been in the majors for the past couple of years, but he's struggled this year. Luis Severino, he's expected to be one of their top pitchers in the future, and I think he is still young enough to do that. So it looks like the Yankees are on the right track to becoming a kind of a really good, exciting young team. Why
do you think the Yankees kind of had a sudden, I don't know if I want to call it a change of heart, but they had that sort of process where instead of rebuilding, they kind of would just reload every year. You know what I mean? They would always sign that big name guy, but now they've kind of switched roles here and kind of are starting to rebuild their team. Why do you think they sort of had that sudden change in sort of philosophy?
Well, I think a lot of the players that they got rid of, they were aging. Carlos Beltran, he's like 36, 37, and Martin Teixeira, he probably could have played it longer, but he is 36.
And he had the injury issues.
He had injury issues. Alex Rodriguez, he's 42 years old, so I don't know if he could have played any longer than he wanted to. But it is a different time in a way. The luxury tax has changed in baseball. Economic landscape. The Yankees can't really outspend like they used to.
Think about the Dodgers, how much they've spent recently.
Yeah, they can't really outspend other teams anymore. They just can't do it. And I think it's because they just haven't won since 2009, the last time they won the World Series. They just haven't had success past couple of years. So that may be a reason why, but yeah, they just don't have the luxury of outspending teams.
I think that definitely, what you mentioned, that they haven't won the World Series in 7 years, I think that definitely plays into consideration. I think a lot of it is what you said, though, with not being able to outspend, because think about teams, Boston can spend just as much as them, Texas, L.A.
Both L.A. teams,
yeah,
actually.
Seattle spent a lot recently. Think about what they paid Cano.
Even the Giants spend money this offseason.
Yeah, Philly. A lot of teams Philly's not doing too well, but in the past couple of years, think about what they would spend for people. So, like, what's his name? Cliff Lee. So we'll think about what they spend on people like that. So a lot of teams have money now. It's really sort of a more diverse playing field. So I think that definitely falls into consideration as well.
Yeah, and it is a different time, and that's the only thing, because there's no really salary cap in baseball, how there is in football. But there's so many good teams nowadays. So many good teams in baseball now. It's kind of hard to like outspend other teams, because the Yankees were one of those teams where practically everyone wanted to go to. That was the thing, like you play to be a Yankee. I don't think it's like that anymore, and you got the Boston Red Sox there. Even like I said earlier, the Giants are spending money now. They spend money on Johnny Cueto, Jeff Samardzija this summer. I mean, not this summer, this past winter. I think I think the economic landscape kind of plays more of a part than being on than the championship team. But of course, the championships does play a part too. Not being able to win the past couple years, that does play a significant part. And
I think it does. Think about really in every sport, when people are on the tail end of their career, when they're a hot free agent, they want to chase that elusive championship they haven't won. Think about Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, Karl Malone and Gary Payton when they went to the Lakers, the end of that Shaq and Kobe run back in the early 2000s. So I think that plays into consideration as well.
Okay, like getting back to kind of like what you said, Ben, I kind of like to compare the New York Yankees right now to kind of like the Los Angeles Lakers right now because, a couple years ago, probably like 5 years ago, when Kobe Bryant was in his prime, everyone wanted to go. Well, that was the thing. Is like Los Angeles was one of those teams that everyone wanted to go to and considered because they were actually winning, but they haven't won. They haven't won like more than 30 games in a while, and no one wants to play it anymore. So I can say maybe the same thing for the Yankees.
Yeah, I think if the Yankees are going to turn it around, I think they're definitely doing the right thing, building through the farm system, building young talent, because that's the talent you can keep over 5, 6, 7 years together as opposed to...
And they're a lot cheaper, too.
Exactly, or as opposed to, this guy has maybe 2 or 3 years left, we can maybe make a quick run at it. This is something they're going to be building like sort of a dynasty towards, and then that's when you get those aging players saying, well, the Yankees are going to be the team next year that are going to make that jump. All these young guys, I want to be a part of that. That aging guy who's maybe got a couple of years left, then he goes to the Yankees as opposed to maybe right now he's going to the Cubs or something like that. So I think they're definitely doing the right thing, building through the farm system with the baby bombers, as they're sort of phrasing it, kind of catchy and everything. So I definitely think they're doing the right thing as opposed to just gathering a lot of great individual talents and trying to mesh them as a team, kind of building young prospects and working them in as a team.
And another team that actually came to my mind during this conversation is the Chicago Cubs. A few years ago, one of the best farm systems in baseball. They brought up Anthony Rizzo after, acquiring him from the San Diego Padres in the Andrew Cashner deal. They acquired Addison Russell and the Jeff Samardzija deal. They already had Chris Bryant. They had Javier Baez, who is one of their utility players, Jorge Soler. And they have Albert Amora, who's probably seeing some time on the bench, but he could be one of their starters. They had all these young guys, and people were saying, the Cubs are one of the teams to look out in the future. They have one of the best farm systems in baseball. I think, honestly, right now they have probably one of the best infields in baseball.
And that shows, obviously it's a fan vote, but look at what they had in the All-Star game this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of compare the New York Yankees right now with this young core to the Cubs like a few years ago. Everyone thought last season, the Cubs were 1 year away from being in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs last year, and honestly, they're on their way to probably contending for World Series this year. So
absolutely.
So I kind of compared this young New York team in the Bronx to the Chicago Cubs. That's the best way I can compare it if I want to use a baseball team. So
okay, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I say.
It's a good one. I think it's very fair.
Yeah. So we're going to take our last break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, and we're going to be talking about some American League, Cy Young, and MVP races. We might get into some National League races too, but just stay tuned.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We still, here on the top of the eighth inning, we have a 1-1 game between the Red Sox and the Tigers. And here in the bottom of the fourth, we have a score change. We have a 5-3 lead now, the Cubs over the Brewers. We had a 3-run home run for the Brewers by center fielder Kirk Neuenhuis. Great name.
Great name.
Hit a 3-run home run off of Jake Arrieta. So we have a 5-3 lead now in the fourth inning for the Cubs.
All right. We were just talking about the Cubs briefly, too. How good of a young team they had.
Kind of jinxed them.
Yeah. Like we always do here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We jinx everybody here, guys.
It seems like we always do. Like I remember on the sports show, I jinxed Chris Sale because he was, I think he was 6-0 or 7-0. And then I kind of said like, oh, he's going for, his 7th or 8th win tonight, and then he ended up losing. So
yeah, we actually talked about him here too, way back a couple months ago about him being the clear-cut favorite. He's actually not even the favorite for the Cy Young Award anymore.
He's had a drop off ever since he threw his little temper tantrum and decided to cut up those throwback jerseys.
Which I still think that was kind of childish. But anyways,
it was.
I want to get into some players that have emerged themselves in the American League Cy Young race. 2 players that have been just dominant on the mound are Zach Britton, the reliever for the Baltimore Orioles, and Danny Duffy for the Kansas City Royals. Danny Duffy wasn't even in the rotation to begin the year. He was a reliever, and then didn't get into the rotation till middle of late May and just been on a tear. I think he hasn't lost since like May or June. It's been a while since he's lost.
Yeah, Danny Duffy's doing great for the Royals. He's 10-1. He's got 143 strikeouts. He's got an ERA of 2.73, and he has the lowest WHIP in the American League at .98, so under 1, which is really good.
Yeah, and getting back to Zach Britton here, he hasn't allowed an earned run since like April. That's
crazy.
We're in August.
I think the one thing that's maybe hurting him is he is a reliever. You don't see that very often. The last time I can really remember was Eric Gagne when he was on the Dodgers as a closer, ended up winning the Cy Young Award winner as really the best pitcher. So I think that definitely plays into his disadvantage. I would still expect a starter to sort of win that award, but definitely a great accomplishment. I'd say he's definitely the top reliever.
Best. Yeah, I think honestly, it's between him, Zach Britton, and Aroldis Chapman as for best closer in the baseball right now. I think that's the argument right now because Chapman can throw 195 miles per hour like heat. Britton, he just shuts down everyone. So, yeah. And they're both not well. They used to be both in the American League. Chapman's now in the National League with the Chicago Cubs.
So we said that Sale was definitely the favorite at one point, which he was. But now we have really a toss-up here. I mean, who do you really see as the favorite as it stands right now? If the season were to end today, who would you vote for?
It's kind of tough, man. Because you got guys like Corey Kluber, who is putting together a great second half. Justin Verlander is putting together a great second half. And Aaron Sanchez, he has like 2 losses. He went like 2 months without a loss. And you got J.A. Happ, who is leading the league in wins, even though his ERA is not as good as the other guys. And you got Cole Hamels in there. You got Stephen Wright, who just got put on the disabled list, so that's going to hurt his chances. Rick Porcello, 15 wins. There's just so many guys that are having good years, but Danny Duffy, I think what's going to hurt Danny Duffy is that if he continues to be in the rotation from now until the end of the season, he's probably only going to get maybe 26 to 27 starts. And I think that might hurt him a little bit. I think Kershaw did win it with only 27 starts, but come on, that's Clayton Kershaw there.
Yeah, he's only started 18 games as it stands right now, but he's made 34 appearances, obviously coming from the bullpen, those other 16. I really don't know. I mean, you look at people like the King, Felix Hernandez, who won it a few years ago with really a even 50-50 record, and he had such that low ERA. That's what really won him the Cy Young Award. So it seems like the voters look at that more as opposed to your wins and losses. So I think you have to put in consideration people, as you mentioned, like Aaron Sanchez. Michael Fulmer does lead the league in ERA at 2.25. The 10-3 record doesn't really, stand out. You mentioned J.A. Happ of the Blue Jays with a 17-3 record, but his ERA is just over 3. So, I mean, I really don't know where I would vote if it was up to me. I don't know what I would do.
I think Danny definitely will get some votes in there. I don't know if he has enough to win it. He just hasn't had enough starts. He kind of has emerged himself as the ace of that staff. He's probably having the best season in Kansas City since Zach Greinke wasn't down. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to vote right now, honestly, I think I would go Aaron Sanchez. We talked about how he hadn't really lost in a few months, but if you're looking at ERA, it seems like the voters really determined that. Look at some of the top guys: Happ, Porcello, Chris Tillman from Boston, Chris Sale. They're all ERAs are over 3. The lowest ERA in the top 10 is Cole Hamels at 2.88, and then you have Sanchez at 2.84. So those are the two lowest ERAs in the top 10 there, and they each have 12 wins. So I think it really comes down to what they value. Well, obviously we have a month and a half of the season left, so I think that's going to determine a lot. But it's going to come down to what they value more, your record or your stats.
Yeah, and, getting back to what you said about King Felix winning the Cy Young, remember Tim Lincecum's second straight Cy Young award? He didn't have as a great a year as he did in his first year. I think he only won he went 13, 15, and 7 the second year he won it. And a lot of people were actually surprised that he won that second Cy Young because I was just as surprised. But his strikeout numbers were just phenomenal. His ERA was there. His team wasn't even in the playoffs. That's why I think a lot of people were surprised. But, yeah, I think voters do value those stats. How many runners you allowed on base, how many runs you allow per game. It does matter. It's valuable. I know you can win like Jay Happ here. He's had 17 wins, but his ERA is like over 3.
Right. So it's going to determine what they value more, your stats or your record, and it over history
or your value to the team.
Right. Yeah. And over history, they valued definitely your ERA and your stats higher. Look at people like Hernandez and you mentioned Lincecum. So I don't think the record really determines much. Obviously, that's the one thing that stands out. That's the one headline you get more than often. But we're going to have to find out. It's going to be a tough race here of Cy Young.
It's a tough race. I don't know who I will vote for at this point, but it is pretty tight. Anyways, moving on to the American League MVP race here. It is heating up. It's heating up here, Ben. We thought Jose Altuve was a clear-cut favorite. Not anymore.
Well, with Altuve, I still would put him, if the season ends today, as my leading vote getter. He's hitting .364. The second highest average in the league is Mookie Betts at .317. So he's got 47 percentage points higher than anyone else. That is absolutely incredible. He doesn't have necessarily the stats like some of the others. He's got 19 home runs, 75 RBIs, 26 stolen bases. That's definitely great. But look at people like Betts. He's got 28 home runs, 89 RBIs. David Ortiz has 93 RBIs. But there's a lot of guys I could see winning. I'd say, personally, for me, I'd still vote Altuve because of that average. He started hitting the ball a lot better. He's got some pop in his game finally, 19 home runs. But I could see a lot of people still winning the MVP.
There's a lot of guys out there that can really get the MVP award. Altuve, the batting average is there. The batting average that's phenomenal. 362 or whatever.
364 as it stands right now.
Yeah. And he has 19 home runs. That is incredible. And of course, Altuve always has that speed. He steals bases. He's basically a 5-tool player now. Yeah. And that's scary. Altuve hitting home runs is scary. And, he always got Mike Trout. He's always in that conversation. I know the Angels are not as good, but he's probably one of the main reasons why they're not that bad. And, of course, you got Mookie Betts, who has entered the race now, basically. He's just been on a tear.
Yeah, I'd put Betts really behind Altuve as it stands right now. Mentioned 28 home runs, 89 RBIs. He's got an average of 317. He's got a wins above replacement at 6.8, which is third in the league behind Trout at 7.7 and Altuve at 7. So it definitely means a lot to Boston.
Yeah, and his Mookie Betts' WAR, wins above replacement, is fourth. It's top 5 in the league.
Yeah, that means a lot. You have to definitely consider that, necessarily looking at the stats, but what he means to the team.
Yeah, and he really does mean to the team. We were talking about the young Yankees prospects and players. the young Boston Red Sox players, they've just been phenomenal this year. Mookie Betts merging himself as one of the best outfielders in the league.
Yeah,
best
Xander
hitters.
Bogaerts, Jackie Bradley Jr. had a long hitting streak of 29 games earlier in the season.
He's still going strong. Everyone thought, that was just a hot streak. No, it is legit power. Man, this young Boston Red Sox trio, it's just been phenomenal. But I think as of right now, the best out of the trio is probably Mookie Betts, hands down.
Yeah, he's having the best year. And as far as the MVP race goes, my dark horse here that could maybe make some noise in the last month and a half, who we have not mentioned, is the reigning AL MVP, Josh Donaldson of the Blue Jays. He's hitting 289, so that's not great, but he does have 28 home runs, 80 RBIs, and he's tied with Betts for the league lead in runs at 96.
Yeah, I was actually going to get into Josh Donaldson before you brought him up. I'm actually kind of did. No one's even talking about Josh Donaldson in a way. He's having a quietly good year for the Toronto Blue Jays, who are also in contention for a division title and a playoff spot with the Boston Red Sox, and it just amazed me how he's not talked about it a lot.
Yeah, Donaldson and the Blue Jays leading the division right now by 1 game over Boston. And Boston playing so well, they've won 6 in a row going into today's game, which they currently are tied in the 8th inning. But, for them to be playing so well, you look at the MVP, sometimes it gets awarded to a guy on a good team. I think that's where it kind of hurts Altuve, is that the Astros may not make the playoffs. Doesn't look like they're going to. So I think that's where it might hurt him. But you look at You look at Donaldson with Toronto and then Betts in Boston. They're going to be on probably playoff teams. So I think that helps them.
I think there's 2 dark horse candidates that can possibly win the MVP in the American League: Manny Machado and David Ortiz.
Yeah, David Ortiz, he's having really... It's crazy to think this of how much success he's had over the years, but he's having really a career year in his final year. But I think the thing that hurts David Ortiz is he is a DH.
Yeah.
He does not play in the field. So you don't have the fielding mechanics. You don't really have much of a base running threat with Ortiz. But 93 RBIs, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. He's having a great year in his final season in the majors. And Manny Machado, I think he just keeps getting better. I think, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished in the top 5.
Machado's a great young player. I think the one thing that might hurt him, and I don't think it should, is with the writers who vote, is sort of his ego, his sort of attitude. Think about when he got suspended earlier with Ventura of the Royals. He's had a couple incidents like that. I think that might hurt him, is his attitude when it comes to voters. Because they look at that stuff. Think about how they vote people into the Hall of Fame. They look at possible steroid use, or in Pete Rose's stance, being banned and everything. They look at that stuff in voting people into the Hall of Fame, so I think that's where it might hurt Machado.
I don't know if that hurt Machado. I think it's a little different for season awards in the Hall of Fame, because if I just don't see how. Well, I can see your point, but Machado, he only missed 4 games because of that suspension. Right,
and I'm not necessarily saying it's because of him getting suspended and the games he missed. I think it's just more of his attitude. Like people might not like
his
him.
Persona,
right? People might not like him, or he might rub people the wrong way. So, I mean, that happens. Look at Terrell Owens in the NFL. There's no question he should be a Hall of Famer, but his attitude is what rubbed people the wrong way and did not get him in yet.
Yeah, and I talked about Terrell Owens on my football podcast too, and I do kind of agree with you in that sense, but I still think Machado still has a chance. He keeps getting better. I don't think he's going to win it. His stats are just not as high as the other guys, but I think eventually he will become a valuable MVP in his later career. Remember, this guy's only 24, 23.
It's really possible.
He's still young.
He's a great fielder. Yeah. He's going to win Gold Gloves for years to come.
And he plays shortstop, third base. Come on. He's
versatile.
That's versatile. That's versatility right there. And National League, though, I think I got Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant winning the MVP. National League.
I mean, I think the AL's kind of getting a lot of the headlines because we have a lot more offense in the American League. Daniel Murphy's still a good possibility with his high average there for the Nationals. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see how things go with the NL MVP.
Yeah, and then Corey Seager actually could possibly emerge in the race, even though his RBI numbers aren't as high as the others. But I don't know. I think Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, I think those are the 2 guys that are in the league right now. Because they are on the best team.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of times voters look at that as who's the best player on the best team. Sometimes you have to be on a good team to win the award, so that gets looked at.
Yeah, and that concludes our show for the week. Yes.
Yes, both shows.
Yeah,
I feel like we're two very good shows.
This one was really good. That was a good discussion we had. Everything was good.
I agree.
I think every show was good. That's just
Well,
me.
I do too. So I mean,
all right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so Jeremiah, where can everybody hear the shows at?
Dude, they can hear us anywhere on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, SoundCloud, even on our website, gsmcpodcast.com. You can listen to us anywhere, and it's free, guys.
It's free 99.
Free 99, best price ever.
Endless hours of content.
Exactly. You can spend a whole day listening to this show, my football show. You don't have to listen to this show after. Well, I do want you to listen to the show, but you don't have to.
Of course.
But you don't have to listen to my other football show if that's not what you guys are into. There's tons of things out there.
Yeah, even stuff that's not sports related.
You got television.
Yeah, music, television, movies, social media. The weird news one is pretty niche, pretty catchy. There's a lot of great funny
Social
stories
media
on
news.
there.
I like the social media news a lot.
Yeah, and then there's also on the website, gsmcpodcast.com, there's also a portfolio of coming soon podcasts. There's a tab you can click on. There's a lot of great things. There's more sports-related stuff. There's also some non-sports-related stuff. One of them is like the craziest things I saw on YouTube.
Yeah, you talked about
so
that
I feel
before.
like that would probably be pretty interesting.
Yeah, you talked about that one. Crazy stuff I saw on YouTube. That would be a fun podcast to do if I were to be selected to do it. Actually, I don't know if I'll continue doing this. I'm kidding. But no, I'm kidding. But yeah, man, thanks, guys, for tuning into this show. And you can follow us on Twitter at GSMC_baseball and on Instagram with the same handle. That is at GSMC_baseball. You can also like us on Facebook at Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. And I think I covered it all.
I think we touched on everything.
Okay, well, you guys have a great weekend. You guys get out there, enjoy some games, enjoy some baseball. And we're in the thick of things, guys. Playoffs are about a month and a half away. We are into an exciting time. What a time to be alive.
Yes, definitely well put.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day.